Hey, everybody, and welcome back. We love a good career deep dive, and today we are taking a close look at the world of drawing artists. It's a career that's all about taking an idea and bringing it to life visually. And before you think, oh, this is just drawing, like sketching in a notepad, trust me, there's way more to it than meets the eye, especially now with how technology plays such a big part. Some of you listening might be thinking about your own career path.
Yeah.
Maybe even a whole career makeover. So if you're dipping your toes into the art world with this deep dive, get ready to be surprised. This is way more than just, crayons and coloring books.
I agree. It's fascinating. You know what's so cool about all this info you sent over from RoleCatcher
Yeah.
is how it shows this really interesting blend of like classic art and then all this cutting edge tech that's around now. It's like these two worlds, you wouldn't think they go together, but they're totally connected.
Yeah, totally. And I was struck by how RoleCatcher actually defines what a drawing artist does. They say it's expressing concepts by providing a drawn representation corresponding to the idea. Okay, that sounds a little like something out of a textbook, right? But it got me thinking, it's like being a visual translator almost.
Absolutely. You're taking an idea, and it could be anything like a character for a video game, a scene in a movie, whatever, and you're turning that idea into visuals, into a language that everyone working on that project can get and be inspired by.
Yeah, it's like they're building a bridge between like pure imagination and, okay, now we can see this thing. So it's not just about being able to draw, it's problem solving, it's storytelling, it's having that creative spark. And it's crazy how many different industries drawing artists actually work in. The list from RoleCatcher is pretty impressive.
It really shows you how important visual communication is, even if you're not like planning to become an artist. We're in a world with so much information everywhere you look, right?
Yeah.
So being able to communicate clearly and in a way that really grabs people through visuals, like a drawing artist does, that's a super valuable skill no matter what field you're in.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. How many times have you been like wowed by a website or a presentation that's just beautifully designed? That's the power of visual communication right there.
So true. But what really surprised me was how much digital tools are changing things for drawing artists. We're not talking about just doodling on an iPad here.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It's a huge shift. And it's something that people who aren't, in the creative world might not even realize. Digital art, it's not just about learning some new software. It's
Yeah.
about developing a whole new skill set. And these are the skills that everyone's looking for right now. Like think about programs like Adobe Photoshop or Blender for 3D modeling. These are becoming essential tools for drawing artists these days.
Oh, for sure. It's like I can remember back in art school spending hours bent over my drawing pad, wrestling with charcoal and erasers. And let's be real, my artistic peak was probably back in like elementary school. But seeing how these digital tools are basically opening up whole new worlds for artists, it's really exciting.
It is. And it's not even just about the tools themselves, is how they're changing what's possible. Like the guide even talks about virtual reality and augmented reality starting to show up in the field. Imagine designing like a character for a VR game or creating some immersive art installation. It's wild.
Yeah, that's next level stuff. But let's bring things down to earth for a minute and talk about, what it's actually like to be a drawing artist. The good, the maybe not so good, the whole deal. I think we've all heard that saying, the starving artist, right?
Yeah.
But this RoleCatcher material, it kind of gives you a reality check. They get into like the pros and cons of being a drawing artist. So let's dig into those a bit. One of the pros that really jumped out at me was self-expression, which makes sense, right? It's art. But it's interesting because as a drawing artist, a lot of times you're working with the client. You're not just like creating whatever you want.
That's true. It's more like, I don't know, how would you put it? It's like collaborative self-expression. You're trying to find that balance between letting your own style come through, but also giving the client what they need. I remember this one project I was working on the client. They wanted this character that was like both powerful and vulnerable at the same time.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, how am I going to do that visually? But honestly, those are the kinds of challenges I love because that's where the magic happens when you figure it out.
Yeah, it's like solving a puzzle, but instead of pieces, you're using brush strokes or pixels or whatever. It's not just about making something pretty. It's about understanding the why behind it.
Right.
Okay, but let's flip it around for a second and talk about the cons. One that really hit home for me, especially these days, was the whole limited job stability thing.
Totally. And you can see that playing out with how many drawing artists are freelance now, which RoleCatcher actually lists as both a pro and a con, which I thought was interesting. Like on the one hand, you have all this freedom to pick your projects, pick your own boss, basically.
Yeah.
But it also usually means your income isn't stable and you're always having to hustle for that next job.
It's that age-old trade-off, right? Security versus freedom. So for everyone listening, it's something to think about. What's your risk tolerance? What kind of work environment really gets you excited? Now let's switch gears a bit and talk about the skills you need to even get started in this field. I have to admit, when I saw computers and electronics listed as a key skill, I was like, wait, what? Since when do artists need to know about motherboards and stuff?
Right? It seems kind of random. But when you think about it, it makes sense. I mean, we've talked about how crucial digital art is, right? And to really master that, you have to understand the tools, the software, all that. It's not so much about knowing how to code or anything, but you have to be fluent in like the language of digital art, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like you don't have to be a mechanic to drive a car, but it helps to know a little something about how it works. And speaking of leveling up, the RoleCatcher guide mentions that drawing artists can move into leadership positions, things like becoming a senior drawing artist or even an art director. What do those roles actually involve besides just being, an amazing artist?
Well, that's where being able to collaborate and communicate really comes in. It becomes less about your own personal art and more about guiding a whole team of artists, making sure everyone's on the same page and keeping the overall vision for the project cohesive. You're kind of like the conductor of an orchestra, but instead of instruments, you're working with creative talent.
Oh, I like that. So it's not just about drawing, it's about leadership vision, inspiring a team to make something amazing. And speaking of inspiration, I loved how RoleCatcher mentioned all these resources for continuous learning, like joining art associations, going to workshops, that kind of thing. It really emphasizes how this isn't a field where you just learn something once and you're good to go.
Absolutely not. The art world, especially with technology,
Hmm.
always changing. It's a constant learning process. If you want to make it in this field, you have to really embrace that. Be a lifelong learner. Always be curious. Always push your creative boundaries.
Okay, so you've got the skills,
Yeah.
you're learning new things all the time. But how do you actually land a job as a drawing artist? RoleCatcher has this whole section on like acing the job interview. And one question they point out really stuck with me. How do you balance your own artistic vision with what the client needs? It's like the ultimate balancing act for creatives, right?
For sure. It's something that interviewers always want to see. Can you listen to the client, be flexible with your style, find creative solutions within their guidelines? One thing RoleCatcher really stresses is having a killer portfolio. Something that shows off both your digital and traditional art skills to really prove that you can handle different things.
So it's not enough to just be a good artist. You have to show them you can adapt, try new things, really bring those client ideas to life. And speaking of putting yourself out there, the guide also talks about how important networking is, joining organizations, going to events, that whole thing. It's all about making those connections, right?
It is. It's so important. It's how you meet potential clients, people you might collaborate with, maybe even find a mentor. Plus, you stay up to date on industry trends, new technology job openings. It's huge.
It's like this whole network of creative energy. So, any final words of wisdom for our listeners who might be thinking about a career as a drawing artist or really any artistic path?
Hmm. I'd say don't be afraid to embrace the unexpected. The art world, it's all about pushing boundaries, and some of the most exciting stuff happens when creativity meets technology. So never stop learning, trying new things, and most importantly, never stop sharing your stories through your art.
I love that. We've been diving deep into the world of drawing artists today, but these ideas, keep learning, embrace technology, the power of networking, those are relevant for any creative field. So whether you're a writer, a musician, a filmmaker, a game developer, whatever, take these nuggets of wisdom and let them inspire you on your own journey. And hey, we want to hear from you. What surprised you most about the life of a drawing artist? Share your thoughts with us on social media using hashtag #TheDeepDive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep creating, and keep diving deep into the things that fascinate you.